like to endorse this here video. This is a lot of reading, you know, but a friend of mine, a dear friend, Shul, he sent it up to me, and Shul's the kind of guy that only likes to read 7 sentences tops. Maybe listen to something for 5 minutes. For him to send me something like this, it's a 2-hour long video. It says right here, 2 hours, 7 minutes, 59 seconds. And I've listened to this fella here, and every time I come across one of his videos, I never did subscribe until today, actually. The first time I heard him, I really, the first 15 or 20 words gave me impressions, just from the, I guess you could say the accent of his voice, which isn't, you know, to me something that's geographical, but it's of a different variety. And I was, you know, taken back at first when I first heard him. I prejudged him, I guess you can say, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know your name. I'd like to. Now, I will say this fellow here that I'd like to endorse his video. It's TruthUnveiled777. And like I say, when I first heard his voice, I really didn't like it. It was kind of like, you know, down a chalkboard to me. But I wasn't about to, you know, just click off and not listen to what he says. If I put something on, if they're not going to speak a bunch of BS, I'll listen to them all the way through. You know, like it says, you know, that until you hear the conclusion of a matter, you know, if you answer before you hear the conclusion of a matter, it's a folly to you. It's foolishness, you know. You should always listen to what somebody has to say. Let your ears chew on the words, you know, as though it's great ear candy, you know, and just listen to what's being said. And then you can go ahead and, you know, come to your conclusions or bring forth questions, give a different answer, you know. But I'll tell you, you know, now I've listened to this fella's videos several times. Started a few years ago, I believe it was, where I had on one of my videos this fellow that wrote me, and then I clicked on to his site, and he was promoting things that I didn't agree with, so I let him know I didn't, but I didn't remove his comment. You know, I don't like removing anyone's comment unless they're really, really, really vulgar or offensive to where, you know, a child can read it and not be offended. I'll leave the comments there. But for the most part, you know, this fellow was promoting things that neither the scriptures do, nor does the man that does this, nor does any righteous man or woman that I know of endorse what he was trying to endorse. And his voice, you know, seemed a lot like, in fact, that's what made me sit back and say, oh boy, I don't even know if I want to hear what this fellow's got to say, you know. But I listened, and I said, you know, and I think at the time that he was either calling on Jesus or Yeshua, but I can't remember. And he's done a lot of studies, okay? I'm not putting this fella down at all. In fact, those that are forgiven for much love much. And I was forgiven for many things, maybe not the same sins he was forgiven for, and he was probably not forgiven for the same sins I was forgiven for, but the point is, sin is sin. You know, I don't care if you steal a donut or you know, you murder some stranger and stuff their body down in a sewer pipe, you know. I mean, I don't see there's any difference in it. So when you're forgiven, man, you're forgiven. Now, the thing I'd like to say is that, you know, if I was on a long road trip, there's only a few fellas that I would even consider, you know, going on a long journey with or something like that, because the conversation, I believe, would be rather comfortable with the, you know, the fellow that's, I'm going to show you a couple words that he speaks in this video, but as far as a long journey or anything, you know, I'm sure I could talk to this guy, you know, about anything. And I should call him a brother, because I believe that's what he is. I believe he's going to be sitting at our king's table with the rest of the bride that has proved themselves to walk in the scriptures as closely as possible, even though we're absolutely incorrect in some of the things that we do, because the scriptures were actually written wrong But it's the closest way to peace I know. You know, whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter. Our King told us if we live by the every written word, okay? It talks about that in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4. It says, man don't live by the Messiah alone, but, you know, a man will live, you know, by the every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Father shall man live, and we shall live by it. And that's what our King does. And I see the fellow that's, the brother that's speaking in this video, he's doing the same, especially in his most recent videos. I watched maybe 3 videos ago that he had made. I'd gone back to his site after I seen this, and I clicked on it, and he was promoting very much repentance of sins. And it sounds as though he has repented of sins. It sounds to me like he knows that sin is, you know, 1 Yahnai 3 verse 4, and he knows that it's a transgression of the laws, and I've heard him promote the laws. So I highly endorse this brother. In fact, I think he's probably one of the closest that are on videos that have any kind of number. I mean, shoot, he's got 120,091 views on this here, and it was put out October 9th, 2018. You know, it showed he's got down here 254,000 subscribers, okay? So his words are being heard, and my hat's off to you, man. You know, like I say, as far as comfortable conversation, have to be you or it have to be my brother Shul that, you know, sent me this video. And basically all he said is, please watch this, you know, and then it had your link in there for the entire subject, you know, matter of the message. I mean, he didn't put another word in there at all. And I clicked on it and I said, oh my word, 2 hours? I said, this has got to be something I have to watch. And Shul's one that I would take because there was a time I was being prosecuted. Enoch spoke about these things, by the way, in the book of Enoch, chapters 100 through 108, speaking about the righteous ones. My life in there is depicted in detail, actually, because I believe I'm one of the 144,000. You can see I'm not rich or wealthy. I basically own the clothes on my back and a couple little possessions laying here and there. You know, nothing I wouldn't just get up and walk away from. My biggest possession is the wood stove and the wood that I got, you know. It's going to keep us warm here in the winter. But Enoch spoke about the very things that was taking place in my life back then when there was like 10 city employees. City of Abilene was actually listed as one, so that encompassed the entire city of Abilene's agents or representatives, employees. So the entire city of Abilene came against me. They had 9 other that were human beings. Most of them was from the legal department of the city of Abilene, and they filed a known fraud against me. See, on February 27, 1989, Richard Sullivan, he was a building inspector, he came down to my property with bulldozers and such with a demolition order for 600 Virgil. And I just so occurred when I come out my house with these bulldozers coming up the road, you know, and I said, Richard, I says, what can I do for you? See, he had burnt down my house around a year before. He put my Rottweiler, she was 6 months old, he put her in the house. He took a brand new container, I had like 6 or 7 gallon container of kerosene, and he took it and he dumped it around the house, put her in the house, and then lit a match to it. There was a project that the city of Abilene was wanting to produce at the time called Lytle Shores 2. Lytle Shores was a place where they used taxpayer dollars to dig man-made lake and put high-dollar houses around it, selling it off to those, and the general public had no access to the lake at all. They just rob and misappropriate money and all these kind of things, but they tried to steal my property. And he came to the property with a demolition order for 600 Virgil. I had no property at 600 Virgil. Mine was 700 Virgil, and I pointed it out, and he just looked at me, and I just so occurred to have had a water bill for 700 Virgil. And he looked at me and he says, well, he says, you can't fight City Hall. Then he ordered me and my then at the time pregnant bride off our property, and he bulldozed everything. I had no notice of him coming at all. In fact, I had been to a city council committee meeting for building standards, and I had brought up there that Richard Sullivan put my dog in my house and everything. It's on public record. And Richard Sullivan was present, and he never said a word because he knows what I spoke was true. But what they were doing was trying to steal my property. It was several years prior to that on Cat Claw Creek in Abilene, Texas, there was an old, I guess you could say, village, or, you know, a little village, a little area where a bunch of old black folk used to live. And one fella in particular was an invalid, and he was bedridden. But the city of Abilene, having a plan to be able to take over a certain parcel of property, which my property basically landlocked 20-some acres that they wanted to do their Lytle Shores 2 on. And so what they did was they had made a dam on Cat Claw Creek. And when the spring rains came in, it backflooded that old black area, almost drowned that poor fella on his bed. So what they did was then knock down the dam once that area was flooded. It never flooded before there, and it never flooded there again afterwards. So they put up a 15-year flood zone on it. They gave them old black folk pennies instead of dollars for their property. They bulldozed it all because they had the plan of this. And then I had my property there, see? And I was standing right in their way. And then they found out, oh, wow, the flood zone stops like 10 feet from his property. So they burned me out. So I built 2 new houses, okay? And I had a business with thousands of exotic birds. And I'm talking some of them Amherst pheasants I had at the time were like worth $1,500s and upwards, $1,500 a piece. And I had several of them. I had all kinds of, you know, exotic birds. I had a lot of domestic fowl as well. And I used to do pretty well selling at flea markets and such. But I had got to where I was going to start a catalog. And I had just quit my job before, you know, Richard come down and bulldozed everything, leaving my pregnant wife and me behind. But I had a catalog I was going to start doing, like Murray's catalog, you know, selling fowl and eggs and everything else, you know, bird equipment, that sort of thing. And what they did was they came in and they bulldozed everything. They took everything we owned to the dump. I even showed in the court, you know, that these, and of course, you know, my wife and I had no place to go. We fell through the crack because it talks about if you have condemned property, and they come and bulldoze where you're living, they got to put you up in housing for up to 5 years. See? And they bulldozed everything we owned and just left my bride and me at the time, you know. She was pregnant for the first one in February 1989, okay. We ended up on a school bus, an old abandoned school bus, and all we had was the clothes on her back. I had to go around garbage dumpsters. I quit my job, you know. And my business is bulldozed. We had thousands of birds all over. Thousands of birds. And then they had these packs of, excuse me, I'm getting a little touched. Packs of dogs came through, okay. And for sport, they just started killing. And I started piling those birds. I tried digging graves for them, but that didn't work. I had to start piling piles, and we're talking piles over the top of my head, and I had to get kerosene and such, you know, diesel fuel, and just burn those piles down to ashes. And it took 2 weeks to gather all them dead birds together, all that I had, okay. And they took me to court because I was billing them for what they done, you know. I mean, they kicked it out of court before. There was an attorney that took me on, and he even put a case in federal court that it was brought out in this court case, this fraudulent court case that was brought against me. It was brought out that in the federal court, even the signatures of me were forged. My wife's name was different than who she was supposed to be. This notary public, supposedly, they had a notary seal and everything. They called to find out who it was, and there's no one registered like that. But they had these things, even in a federal court, frauds, known frauds. And Gary Brown, after that, he was my attorney. It was the first case he ever had. And somehow he became, I think it was a district attorney out near Abilene somewhere. But it was because he got favor from, saving their butts from me. But the bill that I had charged him for, these 10 plaintiffs brought me into court. I think it's 23075B of the 104th District Court. The Honorable Lee Hamilton residing, or presiding, or conspiring. One of the cases, that I was brought in what they wanted. Each of those plaintiffs that misappropriated your tax dollars, see, and I could say yours if you're in America, because federal funds are, given to the cities, the municipalities, the counties, the states. They send certain amounts of funds to them, and they, put them right in the bank with all the other funds that come from, local taxes and all these sorts of things. So the funds all get mixed together. Okay, so there's no way they can possibly account for every cent that was federally spent or state, all these things. Okay, so in fact, there's a thing called the Certified Annual Financial Report. If remember, Brian or something like that. An old friend of mine, he did a lot of things on the CAFR, C-A-F-R, the Certified Annual Financial Report. And he's showing where cities and municipalities and towns and villages in the United States of America's corporation as well, all the way up through all governments, when they have a CAFR that they produce, it's the books that they use for accounting. There's millions and billions and trillions of dollars combined of money stolen. See, when it comes to the end of the fiscal year, they got to hide these things, and they usually do it in assets, but then they'll raise your taxes even higher, saying that they're now broke because they hid your money. Okay, and if these CAFRs were turned back over, everybody in America would have a brand new mansion, with a two-car garage filled with cars and motorcycles and all kinds of trinkets and toys that anyone could think of. That's what's hidden away in the CAFRs. Okay, and I had brought these things out as well. Now, I own the city of Abilene's CAFR. I demanded it in my contract to them that they used your taxpayer dollars to file in a district court of Texas. It's a state court, okay? It's one of the highest in Texas, okay? These courts. It's just below their, that don't matter. But anyway, he knew, see, the filing was, the cause of action for the suit was 600 Virgil. The fraud, the error that Richard Sullivan had on the papers, the demolition order itself for 600 Virgil. Okay? The property never existed. And yet you've got 10 different agents, plaintiffs against me. And I'm sitting in the courtroom. One of the times the judge got up, ran away from his desk, ran into his chamber, slammed the door behind him and locked it, leaving the bailiff standing there, and the whole courtroom was full of all these individuals, and it was pretty stacked. Okay? I mean, my case was pretty big at the time. But the judge successfully covered up for all these things. I proved that the plaintiffs, misappropriated your tax dollars to file a known fraud in a court. And they did it with the sole purpose to each gain in excess of $10,000 each from me, with exemplary damages and punitive damages, and they wanted me in prison for 10 years. So they were using your tax dollars to file a fraud against me. Okay? So that they could gain personal finances, personal gains, each $10,000 from me. Now, the city of Abilene was listed as one of those. So therefore, all the employees there were all seeking as well in excess of $10,000 from me that they was going to divide there. But the other 9, was going to put that in their own account because they used your tax dollars to try to put me in prison so they could each gain access of in excess of $10,000 each from me for filing a fraud, known fraud, in a court. I mean, you go down to any clerk's office, whether it's, the county clerk or city clerk or whatever, and you'll see posted there, if you file a known fraud, you're supposed to go to prison for like 10 years, okay? Each of those plaintiffs, by the way, filed known fraudulent affidavits. I proved all this in the court. So in the very end, because they couldn't put me in prison or anything, and the judge got tired of running out of his own courtroom when I was in there, I had no attorney except for our king. And he is the greatest attorney I know of. And he showed me the words to say. And to see a judge jump up off his bench and run into his chambers and lock a door of a district court, you must have some words there that you're saying or something. Because his spirit was moved, I'll tell you. Baphomet ran with him. There's a time that the city attorney, that city attorney's assistant, was sitting on the witness chair. I proved her to be speaking aggravated perjuries. I told the bailiff, I said, bailiff, I said, take this woman down to a jail cell and lock her up for aggravated perjury. You heard her. And he, I said, I move you to move your bailiff, to move his ass over and to grab that woman and remove her from this courtroom and take her down to a jail cell for the charges of aggravated perjury. Well, the judge changed the subject a little bit. Next thing you know, she is off and gone. She later resigned, and I don't know if she moved out of the state or what, but most of them did resign and they moved. But see, in the end, the judge, he let it go, and I kept saying, everything I brought up, my water bills and everything, they wouldn't allow into evidence. Because why? But I did file them in my own papers. I used them as exhibits and such, So all these things are actually in the court record that they were kicking out, saying it couldn't be there because it had, no relevance to the cause of action. The cause of action was over 600 Virgil, which was a fairy tale. It was a fairy tale address. It never existed. Never existed. And I kept bringing it up, but they kept kicking it out. Because why? Because they say, hey, I got a water bill here from 700 Virgil. Here's an electric bill for 700. Irrelevant. Can't be put into evidence. Because why? Well, it has nothing to do with the cause of action. 600 Virgil that didn't exist. And I kept writing, and they kept, trying to use the Public Information Act. Even after the judge decided, of course, from the higher-uppers, probably the Illuminati all the way down, because they all know who I am, they've destroyed my life. They know me. They've taken great pleasure in what they've done. But I kept writing letters, Public Information Act, and they would say, well, the thing is, the matter's under litigation. Even after he got kicked out, and I would write, and they still wouldn't do it. So my friend Shul, he got pissed off. He says, get in the truck. So where are we going? He says, your house. I says, for what? He says, your records. He says, we're going out to Austin. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I wasn't going to argue. It's what we needed to do. So he just got fed up with it, and I grabbed all my records, which were separate. We had to put it on a dolly, to take in, and these were big boxes of records of things I had filed against all these different courts and everything, and where they filed known frauds and all these things. It's supposed to be draining the swamp, and we're going to see. If they're actually going to drain the swamp, you'll see some arrests done in Abilene, Texas, and also in Callahan County, and some of these places are supposed to be 55,000 sealed indictments. That's a lot of people. It's a lot more than just senators and congressmen, combined. There's a whole lot more. It goes way out. And I've got, records all the way up. Like I say, the Attorney General office in Texas, Okay, that was Abbott at the time, Greg Abbott. He's now the, I think he might be the governor still, I don't know. But anyway, we went to his office. Shul drove me right up. He pulled all our records out, went up to the door. They sent down the assistant. We went unannounced. We didn't let him know we was coming. And I sat there for a few hours. I showed him things in the record, and the man, you know, he didn't know what to say. He said, this can't be, you know. I says, well, it is. I says, and I think that something needs to be done. And we discussed the things and said, you know, time's really not the time for a full investigation. Not until all their shenanigans with me was going to come to an end. And I said, well, you know, I says, I bet if a judge was walking by a telephone pole and I loosed an arrow from my bow, and at that time I had a really great eyesight, I said, and if I pinned his ass cheek to a telephone pole with a hunting arrow, I said, do you think people would listen then? And he says, you know, he says, that might do the trick. He says, now I'm not going to tell you not to do that. He said, but something is going to have to be done. He says, but, you know, other than an investigation, he says, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I says, I've been writing these letters, as you've seen, you know, to the city of Abilene, and they keep saying that it's in litigation, they don't have to answer, and because it's a fairy tale and, you know, property anyway, I mean, what I was asking for was tax records for 600 Virgil, any known ownership, this, that, the other thing, you know, the taxes owed, the water bills, whatever. I wanted information on 600 Virgil. And they keep denying me because they filed in a federal court for 600 Virgil that never existed. Can you understand what I'm saying? Enoch spoke about me. And I billed them. I billed them all, okay? I charged the authorities. You can read about that in Enoch. I billed the authorities. I actually own Abilene. I own the state of Texas. It's all in the court records. They filed the bills themselves. The judge dismissed the case. So finally, with this guy, I can't remember his name, it had Wood in it, you know, whether it was Woodson or Woodson or Woodrow, I don't know. And I'm sorry, man, if you're watching this, I just can't remember. It's been a long time. But I do remember you had Wood in your name. And what he did was he compelled the city of Abilene and told them they better answer my question or he was going to prosecute himself and bring them, you know, to the fullest extent of the law. And they sent me a letter saying that 600 Virgil, they have no record of it. They refused to let me file on it, you know, afterwards to say that it was a fraud, and that was within the time limitations and everything, but they just wouldn't file it. Yeah, think about that. They wouldn't even file because I was saying, hey, look, you know, the case was a fraud. It was a known fraud through conspiracy of very high offices, and I billed all the way up to the governor. And I also billed all the way up to the President of the United States. Now, they're just men, but I also billed the capacity of their office that they held. So it's been every president since. My documents are in so many places. I sent off to Loretta Lynch. I sent her, you know, mailings and such. It should be in the record. So I'm really hoping that, you know, the Book of Enoch said that they're going to have an investigation of all those that have done these things to me. I mean, I'm a pauper right now, but I do believe that there's going to be something that's going to give loose, and they're going to give a large amount of money. And it also speaks about how the silver and gold in these last days will be tossed out in the streets. Okay, but anyway, my brother Shul, I could have, you know, comfortable conversation with him. And he's done great things, man. I mean, he's helped me. I know that he's charged the authorities as well. I believe Enoch was speaking of him as well, just not as much was done against him as me. There's the number 144,000. There's going to be a lot of investigations, I'm sure, that's going to affect these ones, because, you know, Enoch spoke about all of us, I do believe. I don't believe he was speaking of just me, you know, and Shul. I believe the others as well have had this kind of lifestyle where no matter what proof and evidence you bring to the authorities, it's like they're blind to it. They can't do anything about it, but it's right there. It's the very same thing Trump's talking about with draining the swamp. You know, he's supposed to be draining the swamp here with 55,000 sealed indictments. Now, if they're going through even the top offices like Loretta Lynch's, well, they should have came across my records there. She never gave me a reply or a response, by the way. She never wrote me. I've never gotten a reply or a response from any of the letters that I send out with these known felonies. I mean, I've got an email that I had sent off to Adam, he's Parable of the Vine, where I explained to him I'm one of the 144,000, and I give him proof and evidence, and I send him off an email that's got well over 80 different agencies and such, even, you know, the Texas Rangers, the U.S. Marshal's Office, all these agencies, police and federal agencies, you know, government agencies. Loretta Lynch wasn't on that. I sent her out hard copy. So it should be, you know, if they're going to, but I did send her emails as well in the past. But I sent her hard copies. So if they're going through her files and her records, certainly they'll see, you know, all these felonies and such that I had actually, you know, filed about that were being committed by the Justice Department in Texas. And it was being covered up all the way to the top. I mean, the paper files that I had, in fact, you know, when they burned down my church, my domicile there in 2016, when they put me in solitary confinement for 44 days. They didn't feed me anything I could eat. And so they starved me for 44 days. Knowing this, they murdered me in their heart because they put me in there, a justice of the peace by the name of Steve Odom. He put out the arrest warrant for me for a third-degree felony, but he's only got jurisdiction up to a Class C non-jailable misdemeanor concerning traffic. But yet he signed an arrest warrant, but nobody can see this. I sent it off to Ted Cruz and everyone, man, you know. All these different politicians, I sent it all the way up to Obama at the time. It's like, look, you know, I mean, you got this judge, you know, this man who acts as a judge, and I build Steve Odom too. In fact, I'm making, I think, I can't remember, $10 or $100 a second since they first took me into custody to transport me from Callahan County to Shackelford County in my boxer shorts and my socks. That's all they had me on. They kept my clothes there in Callahan County. They took me to Shackelford. They took my wallet, though. They brought my wallet because when I got out in Shackelford, that's what they gave me when they released me. They took the sandals I was wearing, made me leave in my boxer shorts and my socks, and they handed me my wallet. And the thing that was missing was my cash. Now, there was a couple dollars in there, you know, but they robbed me of almost $500 between, you know, the Callahan County Sheriff's Office and the Shackelford County Sheriff's Office. And we went back to Callahan County to get my clothes, and I put them on, and I went back on inside because I didn't get out. I figured they'd arrest me for indecent exposure if I just got out in my boxer short and socks. You know, so my friend Larry went on inside, and he got my clothes for me, brought them out. I got back in them, and I went back in, and I said, look, you know, I'd like to see your itemized listing of that which you had, you know, seized, you know, from me. You know, I'd like to see the accounting of what was here because it seems that I'm like almost $500 short in my wallet. That you authorities was paid by the county, by the people, to watch over. to guard and to make sure it was safe until it came back into my custody. I says, but, you know, you'll see I've not signed anything for you to put me in custody. You won't find my signature on anything. I didn't authorize you to warehouse me, and I certainly didn't authorize you to rob me. I want my money. And under duress, they caused me to leave again, or else I would have been promptly put back into jail because, you know, they're thieves, they're robbers. And Enoch spoke of these very things, and he says, you know, that there is going to be an investigation. He talked about the authorities and such. But anyway, that's a little bit about who I am. That's truth. What the man here in TruthUnveiled777 is going to explain here is quite phenomenal. Okay, now when I first read it, or I could say read it because there's only a little bit of speaking in here, and it's not like most of his videos. I love his videos, okay? I'm getting used to his voice. I could go on a journey with the fella and have, you know, pleasant and comforting conversation, you know? I'm sure I could do that, but this man knows about salvation. It appears that he knows the path of our King. And though he calls in a different name than I do, it doesn't matter, you know, because he's keeping the laws and the commandments from what he says. I want you to hear the very first part of this to pique your interest. It's a lot of reading, like I say, so make sure you got a copy or whatever. Put it on pause if you need to. For the most part, you know, the things that he does write, I read slowly. And I get through most of it. There's a couple places I had to pause for that, but, you know, to keep your coffee pot going or whatever, you have to get up here and there, put it on pause. You don't want to miss anything. And there, you know, I never, ever once desired to go to Israel, okay, the land of Israel. In fact, I was telling my friends in the past, it's like, Jerusalem, my father loves Jerusalem. I said, oh, I'm going to have to ask him. I said, Yahweh, you know, why is it that you love that forsaken land, that desert? It's rocks and sand and heat and nothing, you know. Why do you love that land so much? I find it nothing that I desire whatsoever, you know, and I feel kind of bad about it because that's the way I always felt. And with this video, it shows things that in me was kind of like a deja vu, I guess some can say. But if you're the truth, there are certain times in your life getting there that you've heard things. Whether it was just a television commercial or a preacher or somebody talking or something that takes place. And it's like, you never did studies on it before. You never did think about, it wasn't something that your mind ever processed before. But when you hear it, when you see it, or you smell it, or you know that it was always true and always there, and then whatever it is, it simply backs up what you always had in you, like it unlocked your DNA, and a volume of the book came out to where you could see, you know, clearly that it was actually part of you. And all the evidence that is out there being shown is that it actually confirms what you already have in you, what you know, and what you believe, what you're made of, I guess you could say. Kind of like a deja vu, you know, and it's just that, you know, with deja vu, it's usually a dream or something that you already saw, and then you see something going on, and you know how to get out of the situation because you dreamed it. But this is, it's an awareness of something you never studied, but it's like, wow, I know it, but I never knew it. And that's what this video did to me. And I can see, you know, I mean, I was talking, you know, I have someone very dear to me, and the person was talking about an inheritance that they may come into one day, and it said, you know, I need to give it away. And I said, well, why don't you consider Africa? I said, I'll help you if you need to do it. I says, we can get us some drill rigs, you know, and go out there, you know, just a few drill rigs, and go on out there to these places that need it. drill some wells for them, you know, and there's an electric device I know that runs almost maintenance free, you know, that could keep a well going, and we could bring water all over Africa, you know, and we could turn that place back into the place it should be before all these curses started coming down, you know. So these things were going on in my mind, and when I seen where this stuff is taking place, it's like, now I understand. I've always loved Africa. I always have. I've never been there. I've seen some pictures of it, you know, and a lot of videos, and they make it look pretty desolate, even in, you know, the areas that were quite full of life, you know, and foliage and stuff, you know. It's still got the eerie feeling from desolation or something. I don't know what else to call it, but it was like I longed for Africa, you know. And as far as going to Israel, I even changed my name because it was supposed to be a thing for citizenship in Jerusalem or Israel. And reluctantly I did it. And I detested thinking that we were ever going to go there, you know. I never wanted to go to Israel. And when it comes to praying for the peace of Jerusalem, I always ask our king, I says, would it be all right if I just kind of like pray for the people that are yours, you know, that know you now or will come to know you? Could I pray for their peace? Now, as far as wherever the land of Jerusalem is, because I also heard of studies, you know, I heard that Mount Zion there, you know, where the temple used to be, was actually a Roman garrison. And I don't preach about these things, you know, the history and such. I leave that for other people, like TruthUnveiled777 does a great job, you know. I don't know if he brought anything out about a garrison before or not, you know, being where the temple actually was supposed to be standing. But there's other places in Israel where it was alleged that the actual temple was, so there's discrepancy of the location and such. A lot of the prophecies you're going to find out is going to ring around in your head when you hear this, because a lot of the things that we think aren't really so. It's in the wrong geographical area to begin with of what people think the scriptures are referring to, and it's a mind screw, man. I'm telling you, this is part of the matrix, you know, going down the rabbit hole. But listen to what this guy says for just a couple minutes. Listen to him as a prelude, and then please watch the video.
Where are the real scriptural locations? What you are about to see is an amalgamation and culmination of years' worth of research when it comes to some of the real scriptural locations and things that have been hidden from us for so long, for centuries, if not thousands of years. And as you're watching, I ask that you watch with an open mind. And everything that you've once learned or everything that you thought you knew, I just ask that you continue to open your mind to the new ideas and new possibility that indeed we have been deceived on a grand scale. And as a disclaimer, do not believe a word I say, or rather what anyone says at face value, but rather, as always, do the research on your own and come to your own conclusions and ask questions, because when you ask questions, that is where you will find some real serious answers. Now, of course, we do not have it all 1,000% figured out. However, as we continue to grow and as we continue to learn more things and see new things and also unlearn the lies, we know that we're getting closer and closer to the truth. And remember this, the truth is what will make us free.
All right, now like I say, I really like that fella, man. I mean, that brother, he has a special place in my heart, you know. Even King David with Jonathan, you know, he loved Jonathan, you know, with a love even above women, you know. And definitely, I didn't even know what the love of a woman was, you know, really love for a woman or such. I didn't fall in love till I was like 59 years old. But I can see, you know, that the love for this man, you know, I had even back after I listened to about the third video or so that I did, and his more recent videos, and I see that he's dedicated toward the laws and the commandments. You know, the love for him, you know, has grown even more so since the first time that I had heard him. But what he tells you in here, you know, please be prepared. It may get you angry, but just remember, you know, when you first came to the truth, if you have the truth and you know that you should, let me take the time again to say this is the whole of salvation, that you keep the Ten Commandments. Now, in order to keep them Ten Commandments, there's 613, give or take, laws. Okay, now, maybe 150 of those 613, give or take, laws pertain to you. Like the Sabbath day, keep it holy, the seventh day. The feasts of our Heavenly Father. Then he gets on to whether you're a male or a female. There's certain things in the law that you need to do. Like if you're out there in the field or something, you know, when you got to take a dump, you take a digging tool and you cover up your excrement. Okay, that is a law. So if you break that law, then you broke the Ten Commandments. Why? You stole from me. You may have stole my health because it may cause a disease that I get sick with. You didn't love our Father, and you didn't love your brother. You broke them all. You broke all 10 commandments just from taking a dump in the ground without covering it up, okay? So the 10 commandments you must keep by keeping whatever laws apply to you, and there's probably less than for you to drive your car from here to the store and back to keep, than the laws that you must keep for keeping the 10 commandments. If you keep the two first greatest laws, love your Father with all your heart, soul, might, everything, the fibers of your DNA, loving our Heavenly Father with it, now His Son. We're to love Him above all else right now. And that way, by us doing so, the Father is also loved greatly because, you know, it's a family thing. One day we'll get into that, you know, where you know, scriptures all boil right down to the family thing. But anyway, you keep the laws that pertain to you and put your trust in our King only. That's all there is to salvation. All the other dogmas, the doctrines, the teachings of men. Put these three things first so you can keep the 10 commandments. If you love our Father with your whole heart, soul, might, every fiber in your body, you know, and you love your brother as yourself. You wouldn't take a dump on the ground and just leave it. If you loved me, I might step in it. And our Father said that's a reason, you know, that's now our King because everything's been given to our King. But they walk among us in the camp. And the camp is where we live, okay? So if you're just taking a dump and not covering it, you know, then you're breaking the laws. And I know this fella here isn't about to go around doing those things. He's going to keep and live the laws and the commandments. That's why I endorse his videos. And please, you know, I mean, the very few of you that's watching this, please, you know, refer others to this fella, this brother. There's a couple things I might not agree with totally, but as far as all those out there, I don't care who they are that's bringing forth what many of them consider as truth. They're lacking in some of it to where this man, I believe, is the closest preaching salvation than any of the others. So I highly endorse him. My hat's off to you, my friend. Please endorse this video so that others will go ahead and, you know, send it out to others to watch your channel as well. I thank you for the effort you put in. The studies and such that you bring are great. I hope that you don't mind me doing this endorsement, also endorsing Enoch, the book of Enoch, okay? He spoke of me, and as you see, I have nothing right now, but you'll hear words before too awful long, I'm sure, because something's going to take place. There's going to be an investigation, and it talks about a lot of other scriptures that change around as well when people watch this video in particular. Please have an open mind, people, you know, but the book of Enoch says to cry out for judgment. Please, please, cry out for judgment. This judgment is part of this investigation that's going to take place. certainly I should be listed in there, you know, to where all those who had bulldozed me and burned me out and all these things that nobody has ever done anything about, because the authorities covered up for the authorities. They were all in on it. It was a great conspiracy, and I believe that's why President Trump is being moved to have these 55,000 sealed indictments, maybe more by now, but hopefully, you know, some of the matters concerning me are in there. Even our king says, you know, the things that you gave up for my name's sake, you know, he says, I'm going to pay you back in this present day. You know, some versions say tenfold, some say, you know, 100-fold or more. Who knows? But all I'm going to be getting back is what is owed to me. And it's found in those contracts that are in the record that disclose that I'm billing them for all the felonies that they committed against me and the people as well, you know. And these monies and such are going to go to rebuilding the streets. They're going to throw out the gold in the last days, even at the feet of the 144,000. And with it, we're going to rebuild these, you know, these forsaken places. We're going to repair the streets. We're going to, you know, we're going to repair the breach. And people are going to start to hear the truth. And when they do, hopefully, you know, you're going to be there, you know, TruthUnveiled777, to help lead these people to where they need to be. And that's in, you know, under our King's wing. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for this video. It's going to take forever for me to upload this, and I'm sorry you got so carried away there, but it's a little testimony about me. Please read about me. You know, I'm not trying to be proud or anything of that sort. I don't think there's anyone out there that's got common sense would ever want to trade places with me. I don't even have a vehicle. They burned that up in my church when they burned it down, when they put me in jail, solitary confinement, and starved me for 44 days. They burned up my church, my domicile, and my vehicle to steal my property, which they did, but I've never had the money to get another vehicle yet. I ended up having to escape here because it took a fellow from Colorado to come out to Texas to be my bail bondsman to get me out of jail. Then the only reason he did it was because my friend Larry had to find a way to get me out, and there was nobody in Texas, bondsmen that would, hey, they'd hear my voice, they'd hang up on them, or just tell them, oh no, well, we really can't do anything, you know. So Larry found one that's from Colorado who came out and got me out. That was 44 days with no food. The first 7, they didn't give me nothing to drink unless I wanted to drink toilet water. And I wouldn't drink city water to begin with, so I wouldn't drink that from the toilet. And I self-govern. You know, I've been a minister of health. They've been killing a lot of ministers, you know, or doctors, those that are in alternative health and healing people, you know, without drugs. There's a lot of those coming up dead. I was almost one of them, okay, because I've healed a lot of people with fermented foods and such. A lot of people on their deathbed no longer are there. They've got it tucked away for another day. And they used your tax dollars to put me in this solitary confinement. Your money was behind my murder. I hope y'all can understand that. Let's repent, man. Let's open our voices and say, hey, we need to cry out for judgment. I mean, it's not like I'm going to gain anything. This is a horrible time we got coming on us. But it's something to help us prepare for the believers. You know, those who will live by our Heavenly Father's laws and His commandments. And put their trust in the King and prepare for when He returns. Let Him find some faith here on the earth. He asked the question if He'd find any. I hope that He will. And let's cry out for judgment. Watch the video. Read it. I'm telling you, it will change your ideals on a whole lot of prophecies and everything else. And may the investigation come quickly. They burn me out. They know who did it, and they won't do anything about it. In fact, it's 9486 County Road 254, Clyde, C-L-Y-D-E, Texas, 79510. On or about September 7th, I'm thinking. Somewhere around there was when they burned me out. Now, I was told about it They pulled me out of solitary confinement, and I told them who did it. I told them exactly who did it. And nothing was heard from them, just like the attorney they sent to me, so it would look as though they followed the protocol for their laws in Texas to provide an attorney for someone that was indigent, such as myself, who came and saw all the things, all the jurisdictions. I mean, I had a $30,000 bond on me, where this Steve Odom, he only had jurisdiction up to $10,000 in civil controversy. And right in the complaint itself, it showed that it was over $1 million that I was billing John Weeks for because of contempt of his own court and a bunch of other felonious things that he'd done. And I even charged him, I forget, 34 times or something for him screaming, "Shut up, shut up." So I charged, I forget, $1,200, something like that each time that he told me to shut up. And I billed him for these things, okay? And it resulted in $1 million, but, the time hasn't stopped on it yet. Not until he does his job, okay? That's what my contract was for him. And I said all he has to do is do his job, and then the contract would be null and void, It's like it never existed. All he had to do was his job, and he got the district attorney, the county attorney, and some other fella, T. Barton, whatever his name is there, a little short hot pistol, don't know his job, and he'd get all upset when I explained it to him, and that he wasn't to treat the public the way that he does. He gets a little hot-headed, but he had his hands in the arrest and attempted murder of me as well. It was in his heart, the same as the others, but they know who burned me out, and they put me into jail. $10,000 bond is all that Steve Odom could write up for anyone in his court, his Justice of the Peace Court, that he used as a tool and an instrument, a cruel instrument and tool and instrument against me, saying I did a third-degree felony. He only had jurisdiction to hear up to a traffic violation, a Class C misdemeanor, non-jailable. He couldn't hear anything above that. Yet he had me put in jail. Tried to murder me. 44 days, no food. Okay? Third-degree felony. Retaliation. Because I sent a judge, and the judge even admits in the complaint that he was wanting to evade taxes. That was the purpose of it. He said that contracts are nonsense. It was said that common law was nonsense, and the fact that I said I was a man was nonsense. That's why I was arrested by the complaint, but Lee Hamilton's the one that did the warrant. And he put $30,000 bond on me, only having jurisdiction up to $10,000, and he did it on a felony, not having jurisdiction for a felony. Okay, but because of that, it would have been thrown out of court, but they had no, when they put me in the solitaire, they knew I was going to starve to death. They had it all planned. They knew these things. They had no idea I was going to get out. But now it's all on the record. All they got to do is this investigation. You'll see. What I'm telling you ain't a bunch of hokey pokey, man. This is all absolute truth. And read Enoch, chapters 100 through 108. And you'll see that it writes about me in there. Do a word search, a Google search or whatever. There's programs out there to show all these false arrests they got me for and everything. It'll show you all these things where they burned me out and bulldozed me. And one time I had a church and I went to their city committee meeting and I told the council members they all needed to have their asses thrown in prison and the key thrown away because they stole over $7 million from the taxpayers. And I proved it to them. And it was just a few days later, and there was a Trojan on top of a church that I was going to paint that I had just got, And then they ended up stealing my property, and it's all in the record, people, but nobody can hear me. The laws don't apply right now. Enoch said that they wouldn't hear me. He said, but they will, and they're going to have this investigation. So right now I'm promoting this here video. And as unbelievable as what you're going to see, that you may know is absolutely true when you see it. Know what I told you about what's going on with me is the same. You wouldn't see it in the movies or anything here. You know, Trump keeps saying, President Trump, you know, he keeps saying, this is a nation of laws. Well, yeah, there's plenty of laws, over 4 million laws alone in New York State. Counting the federal and such, they govern over it as well, but, you know, it's a land of laws, but they don't apply to me. And they don't apply to anyone that comes against me. They know who burned me out. He was spoken by name and seen out there and done it. And the House of Yahweh made it down there with the backhoe before the fire department did. They already knew what was going on, but Bill Hawkins wanted my property so bad that he used the courts and everything, and those that are ruling over him and such. Yeah, Bill, I say your name because you're all part of the investigation. I put out a video before on you. I told you, you know, judgment was coming to the House of Yahweh, and it's going to. Over 55,000 sealed indictments right now. It's going to open up a whole lot more for others. Trump's going to drain the swamp, he says, and we're going to see if he does or not. In order to do so, you got to get out all the dregs. You got to get out all the pollutants. And you had one of your men come over and burn me out, and he was seen doing it. They won't even investigate. Check out, I believe it's around September 7th, 2016, 9486 County Road, 254, Clyde, Texas, 79510. It never made the papers. Yeah, they burned my church out. And when the bulldozer got there from the House of Yahweh, they immediately, instead of trying to put the fire out, they started dismantling from my back bedroom first. Okay? That's where most of my records were hidden, was in my back bedroom. And I had evidence of so many things. And I got an email from one of them that I kept saying she was involved in burning it down. And she wrote and said, why do you keep saying I burned you out? I didn't burn you out. They did. They wanted the evidence destroyed. And that's what they did. That's why they burned me out. That's why they murdered me. 44 days, no food. Try it yourself, you know. Verse 7 with no water, no liquid, man. Yeah, they treat dogs better. But Enoch said these things. He said they would torture me. All these, Enoch wrote about me. I'm evidenced, I'm documented, but yet there ain't no investigation. But there will be. And then you'll start hearing that I also can offer you information on how to get salvation, but you got to get it yourself. We all got to work out our own salvation, but with fear and trembling. And the only way you should do that is by the laws and commandments. When you see you're breaking them, like I believe this TruthUnveiled777 did, he saw he was breaking laws, and he said, and the fear and trembling fell on him, and he stopped. The same way as we all need to, because there is forgiveness, and you just don't do it again. I love you all. I hate what you're doing if you're breaking the laws and commandments, but I love you all. Just stop breaking the commandments and everything so I can love everything about you. Until we meet again, I say shalom. Shalom.